Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew, Eileen here. Is there a whispering inside you that life is meant for more magic, more embodied meaning, more connection with your intuition? If so, I want to invite you on a journey. I am once again opening the doors to Unleash Your Inner Witch, a beginner's course in witchcraft for the woo curious. Over the course of 6 weeks, we'll gather in small, intimate circle so you can explore tools like ritual, tarot, crystals, pendulum use, communing with your ancestors, connecting with spirit guides, altar building, cyclical living, and more. It's not about doing all the things. This course is really about coming home to yourself, trusting your inner knowing, weaving simplicity into daily magic. It's a way of being in the world. And whether you already feel drawn to magic but haven't been sure how to practice it, maybe you're curious but skeptical, or maybe you're a seasoned practitioner but you want to deepen your connection with self and in community, this container is for you. We'll meet live once a week for 6 weeks to connect. All calls are, of course, recorded in case you can't attend live. The group is small, maximum 12 women, to keep things intimate and safe. You get a workbook, you get a group chat to stay connected, and lifetime access to these recordings. If you're ready to step into more enchantment, deeper trust in yourself, and a life touched by ritual and meaning, I'd be honored to walk with you. The doors are open. Head on over to myluminouslifeca/unleashyourinnerwitch to learn more and to sign up. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a very exciting episode. This is episode 100. Since my former co-host and I, Ellie McMillan, began the Woo Curious podcast back in 2023 in September, I guess it was, we have put out 100 episodes, and I've been doing it solo now since March-ish, February-ish. My goodness, one of you can tell me, of 2024. So it's been a long journey, a long ride, if you will. And I'm so excited to be at this milestone. It feels really big. It feels like an accomplishment, an achievement. And I'm so happy to have each of you here with me as I get to celebrate this milestone and this achievement. And it wouldn't exist without you, right? You, my beautiful Woo crew, are the reason that I keep creating these episodes every week. I think I missed 1 week once. And we've had a couple little mini-sodes along the way, so there's been a couple little extras sprinkled in, but this is the 100th full-length episode coming to your ears. And so I just want to say thank you, actually, to begin. Thank you for being here on this journey with me, for listening in, whether it be binging episodes and then taking a break, or being one of my loyal every Monday listeners. I am so honored to be part of your journey with your spirituality and the magical world that is all around us. This podcast first began because I knew I wanted to talk more. I love so much being in conversation with everyone, really, but especially with women who are on the spiritual path and who are discovering parts of themselves that maybe they never knew before. Because for me, that discovery, that waking up to the spiritual life and the magical, more than human world all around me has been so transformative. And so I pitched this to Ellie and said, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast?" And she said, "Hell yes, I do." And the name itself, and I'm going to talk more about the name today because I've been teasing out over the last little while this kind of discomfort or questioning I have around the word woo that's been bubbling up. But when I initially pitched the idea of a podcast to Ellie, I had recently done a free masterclass called Light Witchcraft for the Woo Curious, and we just couldn't get past that name, Woo Curious. That is what we wanted to do. We wanted to talk to those people who were at that time at the beginning of a journey. And I know a lot of you came to this space with me as Woo Curious seekers, and now you are far more than Woo Curious if you're thinking of it in the term of being just a little bit curious, maybe still being quite skeptical, maybe not being fully out of the closet, as it were. But I like the idea of the name encompassing not only those beginning seekers, but those who are continuing to walk through the world and explore the magic, the unseen, the unknown with open-hearted curiosity. And so, as the intro says, whether you're a seasoned seeker or a brand new woo beginner, you are welcome here, and this podcast is for each and every one of you. As I was outlining what I wanted to talk about and share on this podcast, I was like, oh, should I go back and do a review of some of my favorite memories, some of my favorite episodes, guests? And I started to think back, and there's so many episodes that I could call out as being some of my favorite. I have had the pleasure of interviewing, I didn't actually count it up, but a lot of incredible women doing incredible work in the world and at varying stages of their own journeys. But some of my favorite conversations, and it's really hard to say this because I've loved most, if not all, of the conversations that I've gotten to have on this podcast. But some of the standouts are my conversation with Carissa Brockman. Way back at the beginning of when I was having guests on the show, I was recording in bed in Argentina, where we were living for the beginning of the year back in 2023. And our conversation was so lovely. She had just begun to explore the more spiritual side, the curiosity into the more woo world. She was a counselor who was exploring the Akashic Records. I don't even know actually if she had done that training yet. And now she is very much fully out in the woo world. But her conversation was one of those that just resonated in my bones. There was a richness and a shared experience that we had that I loved. Another episode that I so enjoyed was my recent episode with Danette Relic. If you didn't listen to that one, I definitely recommend you do. We talked all about, relationships to self, to others, but Danette invented or created this idea of self-marriage. And I loved chatting with her and hearing about her perspective, the book that she wrote. There have been so many episodes with so many wise women. I highly recommend, especially if you're new to the podcast, to scroll back and find the episodes that call to you with their titles. A really popular episode is our Which Wound is the Witch Wound episode from quite early days with Ellie, and I returned to the witch wound a few times during the show. And so it's another topic that I love talking about. Witch wound, intuition, cyclical living. It's all here. It's all been incredible. I really am so honored to be able to drop in here weekly and talk about what's on my heart and what's on my mind. It's also been a really big journey of growth and learning for me. When we began, I had never had I been on a podcast? I may have been on a podcast, but I'd never recorded one. I didn't know about editing software or recording equipment or any of the myriad things that I needed to know. I didn't know how to get it uploaded onto Spotify, and then how does that connect to Apple, and all of the learning growth curves that came with this podcast. And then also that accountability piece has been a huge part of the growth for me. Showing up week after week, even those weeks where it's felt a bit hard or I felt uninspired, and sitting down and checking in and asking what my listeners need to hear, what I need to hear and to say, and how to channel that through. And being able to bring these episodes out to you each week has just been a joy, an absolute joy. So today, in addition to this reflection on the milestone that is 100 episodes, on the incredible women who have shared their time and their wisdom with us here, on my own journey to stepping into this identity as a podcaster, as somebody who people listen to every week. It sometimes comes as a surprise when people talk to me about what they heard on the podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, I share a lot on this podcast and I don't know who's listening. It's a strange world we live in sometimes. So some of you are amazing at reaching out and letting me know what you liked about an episode, or saying, hey, when you've watched it. And some of you are quiet listeners, and they're both perfectly beautiful and okay. And it just strikes me as odd that I sometimes just forget. I feel like I'm talking to myself as I sit here and record this. I am looking at a video of me talking to you. I've got a few little notes to keep me on track today, but it is a sense of almost just talking in my own little echo chamber. And so I love the reminder that I'm not. You are here with me. You are here with me. So let's talk about the word woo. When I started this podcast with Ellie, that word woo felt, really playful and approachable. The title for that masterclass that I spoke about, Light Witchcraft for the Woo Curious, that's such a big part of my story, because that's the masterclass that downloaded in our spiritual coach speak into my brain as I was taking a walk through nature during a weekend-long retreat for female entrepreneurs that I was on. It's that same name that I came home from the retreat, told my then business coach the name, and she went, "Would you consider yourself a witch?" To which I replied, I don't know, would I? And of course I went and asked Instagram, and everyone was like, you don't already? And so the word woo has been important on my journey. It's also, to me, it feels playful and approachable, and it gives people permission to explore spirituality and energy work and all of these things without needing to take it all so seriously right away. It also gives this sense of a little bit of, especially for somebody who's coming from a scientific background, speaking as somebody who did not believe in anything outside of the rational scientific method proven for so long. It felt like there was a little bit of that kind of yeah, I know it's woo, because woo itself is it's a derogatory term. When my dad was sharing with some of his friends about what I'm doing now, he's like, some woo stuff. And they thought he was insulting me. And he was like, no, that's the word she's using. So it's in a lot of ways, it kind of allowed me to be I recognize the cultural association with the word. A lot of people are using it these days. A lot of people are reviving it or reclaiming it maybe as something that's not out there, you've lost your marbles. So it felt kind of like this bridge, it's okay to be curious. But I've relatively recently, come across a woman's work that really made me stop to consider the word itself and whether or not it's a word we should actually be using. So I'm not changing the name of the podcast right now. I'm going to continue to use the word woo and to call you my woo crew and and all of that for the time being. But I don't want to dismiss this kind of niggling discomfort I have at the moment. And so the woman whose work I came across, her name's Dr. Kathleen Funk, and she is acupuncture on Instagram. she's incredible. She has a depth of knowledge about so many different practices, but indigenous ways of knowing, Chinese medicine. I believe she is of Asian descent herself, and so has a connection to those lineages. But she has a Substack called Don't Call It Woo. And I read a couple of her posts about why it is that she takes umbrage with the word woo, or why she says to not call it woo. And the overall, or the overarching argument is that many, if not most, of the practices, whether it be using smoke medicine, whether it be healing, whether it be chakra system work, whether it be Chinese medicine, the word woo has been applied to so many of these and for so long as a way to dismiss or belittle these ancient indigenous knowledge traditions and other spiritual traditions. And now people are using the word to refer to these terms, and they're profiting off of it. And not just any people, right? Especially white women. You can go back to my episode, My Beef with the Spiritual Girlies, to hear a little bit more about how we can get into these murky waters. And again, this is not to lay blame or shame. As I said, for the time being, I will continue to use the word carefully and to reference the fact that there's a bit of tension here for me. And I know that you know, as my listener, if you've been here for any length of time, I am working very hard to decolonize my spiritual practice to ensure that I am not appropriating indigenous ways of knowing and practices that are not my own. And so I think there is space in the world for us to learn at the feet of indigenous elders and carry those practices forwards and teach them in a way that is really respectful and has been gifted to us. And the vast majority of people using these practices have not had that experience. They've not been gifted the experience or trained or learned at the feet of an elder from within the original tradition. So I think that's where we get into these kind of murky areas of appropriation. And so, as you know, if you're here with me, my roots, all of my people come from Europe. As far as I know, I have no North American indigenous lineage or ancestry whatsoever. I've got majority Irish and Scottish. I've got some French, and my bones tell me that that's Celtic in France as well. And then I do have some Irish heritage as well. And I'm mostly drawn to that Celtic lineage history, that part of my lineage that comes from those ancient indigenous practices, because the ancient Celts were indigenous to parts of France, right? Brittany and Ireland and England and Scotland. All of those areas were populated before the Romans came in. And so I am working to find some of those ancient traditions, practices I am learning at the feet of my own elders, to bring some of those practices into my own life and be able to share them with the women who are with me here listening to this podcast, with the women who walk within Wise Wild Women mentorship with me, with everybody who joins me for every round of Unleash Your Inner Witch. And I am definitely starting to sit with this idea of like, the word woo, it does feel a bit dismissive. And I'm getting to a point and a comfort level with my own spiritual practice, with my connection to the more than human, with my connection to the energetic unseen realms, that I no longer fully embrace that term for what I do and how I move through the world and the experiences and what I'm teaching. And it is also useful. Right? So I'm holding this tension. It is useful. It makes spirituality feel less intimidating for so many of us. It can feel less rigid or more accessible when we give it that kind of playful slant. On the other hand, I really don't want to perpetuate harm or erase the depths of the traditions that I draw from. And so I think, as with all things, awareness is an important place to start. Right? It feels really important for me to both acknowledge this tension, but also to not dismiss the word outright, because it has also created an opening for so many women, for so many people, so many of us here, to explore paths that we might once have ignored. I know that's true for me, and I know that's true for many of my listeners. So for now, as mentioned, I am still using the word woo in this podcast title. It's part of the identity that we've built here together. And I'm really committed to staying awake and to noticing and being aware of where the language feels off, and to be willing to shift as I continue to learn and grow more. So I would really love, as part of the celebration of this 100th episode of the Woo Curious podcast, as a listener to whom I've referred to as my woo crew for so long now, I'd love to invite you to reflect on your own relationship with the word woo. Does it feel playful and expansive, or does it feel a bit dismissive or derogatory almost? Is there another word you'd prefer? And even just what happens when we experiment with naming things differently, right? We've talked on this podcast so many times about how language matters, and language also evolves. So we're not rushing to any kind of conclusions here, but that invitation is there to stay curious, stay sensitive, stay willing to be changed by what we're learning. And yeah, I would so love to hear your thoughts on this, and whether that be leaving me a comment if you're watching this on YouTube, leaving a comment on Spotify, you can do that. I'm pretty sure I've got the settings that way, or coming over to Instagram at I am Eileen March and sending me a note or a voice note to let me know, how does the word woo sit with you? What does it evoke? What does it bring up? And what kind of discomforts even play in you as I speak to how the word has been profited upon by the wealthy white women of the world when they're drawing from traditions that do not belong to them, which is always something we're dancing around, right? We're always dancing around. And again, I say that without judgment, because as we know, as why so many of you are here with me, is these wealthy white women, us. We are divorced from our spiritual traditions and lineage, and we are seeking that depth and that meaning to draw from. And so it's only natural and only normal that we would turn to the practices that are still living, right? For so many of us, it's hard to go and connect with the traditions, the magic, the spirituality of our own ancestors, because we've been cut off from it for so long. And in some cases, those traditions don't have a robust living practice or lineage still going. Some of them are being revived, and I encourage you to find those pockets where your people or your people's people are reviving or reconnecting and rebirthing and renewing and updating as needed the ancient traditions of your own peoples. And also to seek out the wise elders of the traditions that call to you, because there's many of them that are willing, more than willing, to share the magic and the knowledge of their people in a way that you can take in and practice and share ethically, really, right? Without appropriating. So, to wrap up, I want to take us back out of this conversation of the woo and into this sense of the culmination of 100 episodes of weekly connecting, sharing, using your voice, being in conversation with the mystery. This is a special place because it gives me the space to speak through the things that are evolving in my life, and hope that it helps you to explore with curiosity and compassion your own spiritual life and the magic all around you. Showing up, using our voices, being loud, being seen, being heard. These are things that were not, and often still are not, safe for women. It's triggering of the witch wound. And so I want to say thank you for being a sacred, safe space for me to be visible and seen and heard. I love thinking back to how far I have come in my own spiritual journey, in my witchiness, in the way that I weave the cyclicality of my nature and the nature all around me into my life, and the growth that I've experienced over the last 2 years traveling here with you. Looking ahead, I just can't wait. I can't wait for all the conversations yet to come. If you know someone that I should be talking to on this podcast, please send me a note. Let me know. I'm always seeking the next incredible conversation that will enrich both my life and yours. And as always, if there are themes or questions or topics, anything that you are wanting me to explore or to ask me, please reach out. I would love to know what it is you are curious about as we move forward from here. Thank you, as always, for being here with me, for walking with me through the play, the joy and the grief, the magic and those moments of sorrow. We have been up and down together here over the last 2 years, Woo Crew, and I couldn't have done it without you. I am so grateful. Please take a minute to come send me a note. Please take a minute to rate, review, like, share, subscribe, all of the things that I ask at the end of every episode. It does make a big difference getting this magic, this podcast, this projection from my heart out into the world and to reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so very much. And I'll be back here with you this time next week. Bye for now.